dive into Igor Tudor's career so far. We're going to take a look at each and every job that he's done in the kind of big leagues, and we're going to start off with his job in 17-18 at Udinese. So what have we got here?
Yeah, so he's actually done quite a number of jobs in the top leagues. We thought these were the most relevant ones. I don't think people are interested in how we did at Hajduk Split or Galatasaray or any of these other teams, because definitely in recent years, these are the ones that are going to be most relevant to our situations, these interim jobs at high clubs. So the first interim job at a top club he did have was Udinese in 17-18. He takes over in game week 35. The team were in 15th in a massive relegation battle. I think were 1 point above the drop zone, and they needed someone to come in and keep them up and make sure they stayed up. They only had 4 games to do it, and not too dissimilar to our situation, but obviously a lot less time. Of the last 4 games, he wins 2, draws 1, and loses 1 of those 4 games. Does end up keeping them up in the division. They end up finishing in 14th. So, did his job, came in and did his job. They didn't end up renewing him at the end of the season. He ended up being out of work for a bit, and Udinese came calling for him again, once in a very similar situation the next season in 18-19, but this time they gave him a bit more time. So in 18-19, the next season, he takes over in game week 29 this time. The team are in 16th, again mired in a relegation battle, with 9 games to go. He wins 5, draws 3, and loses 3 during his time there. He actually guides them to 12th in the division, and they won their last 3 games to save themselves. They stayed up by 4 points. At this point, he's then given the full-time Udinese job, but is sacked after 10 games of the next season, with the team in 14th, losing 6, winning 3, and drawing 1 of his 10 games, including a 7-1 loss to Atalanta, with the team ending in 13th. So the team didn't actually improve that much after he left. They went from 14th to 13th. But the point is, came in twice to Udinese to keep them up, and did it pretty comfortably both times, and actually improved their fortunes quite well in that time.
I mean, you look at those 2 roles, that's exactly what we need him to do at Spurs, that exact job, win a couple of games, win 3-4 games. If he wins 5 games, that's going to be more than enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think both the stints at Udinese are kind of a similar amount of games that he's going to get at Spurs. Obviously, they weren't in the Champions League, they don't have European football, but in terms of the league, it's not too dissimilar to the positions that are in. Maybe Udinese are in a bit of a worse spot than maybe what Spurs are right now. But if he does kind of replicate that job, everyone's going to be more than happy with it.
Yeah, so he was, I think, guiding a team from 16th in the relegation battle to 12th. That's definitely what we're looking for at Tottenham. But again, sacked after getting the full-time job, that seems to be a theme here with Tudor, which we'll get into. But yeah, that was his job at Udinese. So off the back of that, people sides are looking at him thinking, okay, he's done quite well there. Maybe he got sacked because the conditions weren't right, and under different conditions he could do a lot better. So he gets another kind of firefighting job-ish at Hellas Verona. 3 games into the season, they've lost their first 3 games. They're mired in 19th place, and he's come in to the job with I think they finished 10th the season before, so they're expected to be a mid-table team. He comes in, first game, they win 3-2 against Roma, gets off to a great start. In his first 10 games, after losing the first 3 of the season, he goes on to win 5, draw 4, and lose 1 of his first 10 games. So a really great start. He ends the season with 2 losses and 1 draw. Ends the season in 9th place with 1.47 points per game, finishing on 53 points. The previous season they finished on 45. So obviously a big improvement. 8-point improvement, 1 place improvement as well. So actually did a very good job at Hellas Verona. Came in, stabled the ship.
So where were they when he
19th after 3 games? But it was 3 games.
After 3 games.
But they lost all 3. And last season, he took off a team that finished last season in 10th. They lost their first 3. Were in 19th. They ended the season in 9th place on 53 points, and the previous season they only had 45. So improved on their total. But off the back of his job at Hellas Verona, very good job there. He didn't stay. He left at the end of the season, and he got the full-time position at Marseille in 22-23. The same season, actually, Spurs were in the Champions League group with them. So he did take over a team who did quite well. They were second the previous season on 71 points. He ended the season finishing third, so one place worse. But interestingly, his points total was better. So they actually finished on 73 points, whereas the season before, they finished on 71 points. So actually improved their points total, but it was one position down. Champions League didn't go so well. They did lose 4 of their 6 Champions League games. In that, it was a kind of difficult group. I remember it was us, Sporting Lisbon, Marseille, and Frankfurt. So it was quite an even group. They ended up finishing 4th. Well, interestingly enough, in that final group game, there's a famous shot of him on the pitch, right, when Spurs go on to score their winner with Højbjerg. The reason he's on the pitch is because Marseille are going all out for a win to try and save themselves the Champions League. But I don't know if the players realised or not, but if they would have just drawn and settled for a draw, they would have been in the Europa League. And that goal, and that goal that we scored in the last minute actually cost them a Europa League spot, and they dropped down into 4th. So he was, I think, telling the team, what are you doing? Because I think they left one player in defence and went all basically gung-ho, drawing the game. And if they would have just kept the result, I think he might have maybe got wind of the other result going their way, and they would have got Europa League. And so he was probably frustrated with that, and they ended up finishing bottom. In terms of the job overall, he did win 7 of his first 9 games at Marseille. So got off again, similar theme, storming start, really great results, but he did lose 4 of his last 5 games at the end of the season, costing him 2nd place, and ends up leaving at the end of the season due to differences with the board, which seems to be a common theme. But yeah, his Marseille job did pretty well there, I'd say.
Yeah, in a statement as his parting statement for Marseille, he said that the reason he's leaving is because of his tiredness with the club. So, maybe going to loggerheads with the board about future plans or whatever. But yeah, like I keep saying, like everyone goes on about how this isn't a good fit for us and how everyone's been bringing up those stats of his last 8 games at Juventus. But actually, if you drill in to all of his jobs, he's had a really good start at every single one of them. And that's literally all we need.
That's the most important thing. So after leaving Marseille, he's then out of work for a few months until Lazio come calling. And again, another team looking for a firefighter to stabilise the what's going on. He takes over Lazio in game week 30. They're a team who have lost 5 of their last 7 games. They're in 9th position. They're a team, obviously, I think the season before they finished 2nd. So they're a team expecting to be, in Europe, or at the very least, or at least in Champions League. So he takes over game week 30. He finishes 7th, so an improvement of 2 places, getting them Europa League football. He wins 5, draws 3, and loses 1 of his 9 games, so a pretty decent record. He ends the season unbeaten at home in the 9 games that he was in charge. Again, just like his other clubs, he beats Juventus in his first game. So that's a theme that he comes in and wins his first game and does really well.
Big games as well.
Big games. Again, it didn't end the season too well. He drew 3 of his last 4 and losing 1 as well. So it didn't end the season particularly well for him, which is probably why they didn't keep him on permanently. In the Coppa Italia, they lost in the semi-final 3-2 on aggregate to Juventus. First leg, they lose 2-0 away. Second leg, they're winning 2-0 in going into the last minute, and Juventus get a late dagger right at the end to make it 2-1, which meant they go for an aggregate. But it seemed that they had a good comeback and were unfortunate not to go through. But did a decent job at Lazio, got them into Europa League, which I think last season they ended up going out to Boda, didn't they, without him. So maybe they would have gone further if they would have kept him on. But I think stabilised, got good results, but didn't get the job permanently off the back of that Lazio job. He then
seems like a very volatile figure, doesn't he, Igor Tudor? Just gets that initial burst, but you can't rely on him for long-term consistency or anything like that. Literally, come in, get the job done, and then dust off.
Literally, and then that's it. At Juventus, so then he takes over Juventus at the beginning of this season, and
Well, it was the back end of last season. Wasn't
Sorry,
it?
back end of last season, he takes over Juventus, my bad. He takes over very similar to Lazio, game week 30. Can you get us a big boost at the end of the season and get us what we need?
They needed Champions League football.
They needed Champions League football. They were 5th when he takes over. The team had just lost 3-0 and 4-0 in their last 2 games. And I think they just got sacked off the back of a 4-0 home loss to Atalanta. So they just had a drubbing at home, which is obviously horrendous. He wins 1-0 in his first game again, another good start. In the last 9 games, he wins 5, draws 3 and loses 1. Identical record to Lazio. Again, unbeaten at home. So that's another theme in those last 2 jobs. He ends up getting 4th by 1 point, so scrapes in there. Mawani scores 3 in 8 games while he's in charge. They actually do end up giving him the permanent job because they were impressed with what he did in the run-in. However, he is sacked 8 games into the season with the team in 8th with 3 wins, 3 draws and 2 losses. With the team winless in 5 Serie A games. He's also winless in 3 Champions League games, 2 draws and 1 loss, including one 4-4 draw with Dortmund at home in a very entertaining game, losing 1-0 away at Real Madrid as well in one of the Champions League games. And since he has been sacked, the team have improved with the team now in 5th spot. So there has been an uptick since he left. So, yeah, again, and he ends up getting sacked. But he did what he was brought in to do, which was come in, get Champions League football and stabilise the results, which again he did, 5 wins, 3 draws. And what was definitely a theme with him is a good home record, which is unbeaten at home with Lazio and with Juventus, and a very good home record with Marseille as well. So,
I mean, what there is to take from these jobs, like the reasons that he comes in for very specific reasons. Save from relegation, get us Champions League when obviously we're not doing well in that aspect. And he seems to meet all those expectations and meet all those targets that he comes in. And, you know, sometimes he gets given the job off the back of it, sometimes not. And there's all various reasons why that does happen. But it seems as though the initial kind of task he always seems to meet.
Yeah, exactly. And if he can, his last 2 jobs is pretty much identical to us, very similar time in the season, you know, around the 30 game mark. And he's done pretty much identical, 5 wins, 3 draws and a loss. If he can basically just get 5 wins, 4 draws and 3 losses, that would be absolutely perfect. That's all we need him to do. And I think they've definitely got the fixtures to do it. And I think we've got the only problem here. The problem I have, I guess the worry for me is apparently he's very intense when it comes to his style of play. Now we have a massive injury list.
Yeah.
So how are we going to keep up his style of play while also guarding against future injuries? A bit of the problem we had when we definitely under Ange was the last season. The intensity just dropped off massively because we just couldn't be intense without risking further injuries, and we ended up playing a lot lower, a lot lower block and stuff, and obviously it was costing us results as well. But we were just kept losing injuries every single game, and something had to change unless we were just going to continue to pick up injuries game after game. So right now, how is he going to instill his style of play while we have this large injury list? It's not even the case of players buying into it or anything like that. It's more of a case of, if he does play this intense style of play, are we going to get more injuries? And is it just going to be a constant cycle of trying to get out of these injury problems? That's the big issue.
Yeah. Look, I would say, like, obviously Ange had the Europa League and there was crazy amount of games. Obviously he does have the Champions League, but it's not as many games as when Ange first picked up the injury list at Tottenham last season. So in the near future, we're playing 1 game a week until the very earliest
March, early March.
Late March. I think it's late March or mid-March.
5th of March.
Oh, is it the 5th of March?
No, you're right. 10th of March.
Yeah, so it's until then. And obviously in March as well, there's an international break. I think there's a weekend break for the FA Cup at some point in there as well. So there are breaks in there. So there are a lot of games, but I think they are quite evenly spread out, particularly from now until the Champions League. And obviously we've just had this week break and we've got a 12-day break from the last game to the Arsenal game. So that should recuperate some energy levels. We're going to have some players coming back towards March and April as well. So yeah, look, it'll definitely be something that he needs to be wary of, but I'm not as kind of worried as I am as I was with it last season, because there are kind of the fixture list isn't as crazy as it was last year.
I've heard a lot of. There's been a lot of different. I've heard a lot of podcasts talking about his style of play and how he plays. Some people saying he's quite pragmatic and he's actually quite a defensive manager. Some say he's definitely an attacking manager and he's front-footed and he's aggressive. I've seen people describe him as like plays Conte football but with a high line, and I think that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, because what happened with Conte is for 6 months it was actually great football, and like, it wasn't just defensive and stuff. Like, we took the game to the opposition, we opened them up. Obviously, it was a lot of counter-attacking, but it was exciting. Some of the football we played was great. But then the next season, it was you could definitely describe that as much more pragmatic and much more low block, and we were struggling to play the football that we were in the early season. So I wonder if that's the point with Tudor. He comes in, and we have definitely a discernible style of play where apparently he does similar to Conte, where these automatisms, he practices where the passes are going to go on the pitch, on the training ground, not relying on the players' freedom. So because it's very structured, it's quite easy to replicate on the pitch. But then once the opposition work that out, it's easy to battle against it, because you know what they're going to do. So I feel like probably what teams or fans are seeing is it comes in, he does really well and the football's aggressive and it's good, and then once it starts to get worked out a bit, it turns a bit stodgy and pragmatic because you're on the back foot a lot. So that's maybe where the disconnect is. I'm just hypothesizing. Maybe that's where the disconnect is, where I'm hearing different things from different fans, because maybe it starts out quite aggressive, that's his philosophy, but then by the end of it, the results start to wane, and maybe once it starts getting worked out a bit, he starts being a bit more pragmatic, and maybe that's where this narrative of him being a pragmatic manager comes in. As much as I look at Conte, I don't see him as a pragmatic manager. I think he goes out. You can't win the amount of titles he does just by defending. You have to attack teams and you have to go out and win games, and that's by attacking the opposition. I think he does try to do that, but he does definitely have a pragmatic side once the way his way of playing, his automatisms, they stop working. All of a sudden his team get pushed back and he starts focusing a lot more on defending. And I think maybe that's what we're going to see with Tudor. I think we'll definitely see a bit of a burst early on, and hopefully that's enough. But if it starts getting worked out a bit late on, maybe he starts getting found out a bit. But maybe it's not enough time to do that.
If we don't see that early burst, then that means we're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's what you got to be a bit worried about. That hopefully that early burst is enough.
Because if we don't see it and teams have worked us out from the off, then I don't even say what can happen. But there's been a lot of comments about Igor Tudor saying, well, we're in this precarious situation in the league. We're only 5 points above the relegation zone. We should really be bringing in a manager that knows the league. I've seen, obviously, Teddy Sheringham come on and say that in recent days. I've seen a lot of Spurs fans say something like that. What would you say to those kind of people?
I don't think it's the most important thing, but I think it's a factor. I think it helps, because if you know what kind of the level of the football you're coming up against and the teams really well and how they all play and all this kind of stuff, I think it probably helps, but didn't help Frank, did it? Didn't help Nuno when he was here. So being Prem-proven isn't
but I'm not...
Isn't a guarantee.
From the off is a different case as opposed to when you're trying to fight relegation in a game where you don't have, in a league where you don't have too many games left to do so, when you're in the situation that we're in. Like, for example, all the teams that go for firefighting managers, it usually is kind of Premier League proven. Your Sam Allardyce's, your Sean Dyche's, these kind of guys who know the league like the back of their hand, and they come on, do the job, keep them up, and that's that.
Yeah, but I think these guys are going out of business, in my opinion. I don't think they're the right for them on game. Look, Dyche has just been sacked. I know maybe you could argue whether he deserved it or not, but he has just been sacked. I don't think he's going to get a great job anytime soon, in my opinion. He might get, again, a job similar to what he's just got in Forest, where a team lower down take him on. But I think these kind of managers, people aren't turning to them as much as they used to, for a reason, in my opinion. I don't think...
Well, we haven't seen a firefighting appointment in a while, have we?
Well, Allardyce got appointed to Leeds, didn't he?
Yeah, 4 games to go, I think it was.
It was 5 games to go, and they end up going down. Yeah, it's not been too much of a trend. Teams have I think, what was it, did he take over Everton? Well, that's kind of January time, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you're right. Last season, all teams, I'm trying to think, Van Nistelrooy took over, but he wasn't much of a firefighter.
The last 2 seasons, the 3 teams that came up went down.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been, there's not been like a stable Premier League side who's been in need of a firefighting manager.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have needed. They just haven't turned to the typical ones. Like, who would is anyone desperate to a point right now? You know, Allardyce's and these kind of, and Pardew's, and I just don't. I think games moved on from them. In my opinion, the Premier League has moved on from them. So I don't think, teams are looking at them. So I don't think we should either. To be honest, I don't think that's the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've signed like a European version, haven't we? At the end of the day.
Yes, but in a sense, but a bit different. I would say you're not appointing Allardyce to take you from 9th to 7th or 5th to 4th, are you?
No, but what I'm saying is that people appoint Igor Tudor not because they see a long-term vision with him. They appoint him because he needs to do a job. He needs to keep a team up. He needs to get to a team to this place in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's very much a short-term fix for all the clubs that he goes into.
I agree, but he has done relegation fights before with Udinese and Hellas Verona, but I wouldn't compare him to like an Allardyce or the other managers we're talking about, because they're literally just for relegation battles. They're not. They very rarely come into if a team's looking to get Europe or anything like that. Whereas he's done it from a bit of a higher level at bigger clubs as well. Yeah. So I would like to think maybe he's a little bit higher level, but we'll have to wait and see kind of how he does at Tottenham. But yeah, I don't know who would a Premier experience be. Obviously, people talk about Harry Redknapp, but I don't know who on the market right now, Premier experienced firefighter, I would really want to take over this right now. In my opinion.
I mean, I was speaking to Stel the other night, and he was just like up in arms about this Igor Tudor coming in, and he said it should have been Redknapp and Tim Sherwood in a combined role. And I'm just saying, like, let's just get behind this guy, man. Let's just get behind him. I think good things can happen if we do. I really do.
I think since the last time Sherwood and Redknapp have been managing, it's been very different, the Premier League, since then. Even I was even talking about how it's been very different since even Poch was there. And that they're a whole different generation to even that.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think these older managers they've had their day. I think it's the Premier League's moved on from them now. Not saying now, and I'm not sitting here saying Tudor is phenomenal and we're guaranteed to stay up now. I don't think that's the case. I think that we're still in the balance, and this appointment's definitely a risk. And the fact he does know the league and all this kind of stuff.
I think that's the biggest risk about it, of him not knowing the league.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a worry for sure. But given the jobs he's done and kind of where he's got the teams he's taken over and what he's accomplished in terms of, he's pretty much achieved what he's needed to at every job essentially before it falls flat and he ends up getting sacked. But in terms of the short term, he's always achieved his short-term goals, and that's kind of just what he needs to do here. Now, I think in terms of gamble, it's probably a safer gamble than, I would say we're better off with this than a Harry Redknapp or a Sherwood or an Allardyce 100%. I'd rather go in this direction for me. But yeah, it's still a risk for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, like we say, I don't think there was any appointment that we could get right now that wouldn't be a risk.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. So I think this is less of a risk than those.
There's been interesting quotes from Harry Redknapp. I don't know if you saw them. Did you see them?
No, I didn't.